I was predicting that we would get a rally with the presidential election, the Fed, or both. And again, because I told you I thought we were going to go higher to complete that double top. We've had, again, the signals turned bearish right here. Could be warning we're in a topping process. I told you that we had this gray shaded area, that something was getting ready to happen. We had the sell-off and we formed this gray shaded area. So I told you I thought we were going to get another push higher, and now we've seen the balance of power turn positive. But now we're forming divergences on indicators that I told you to be watching for. And that's why I was predicting we get a rally. So looking forward to it with momentum and the RSI and MACD and my oscillators. But I told you we could move above 73,700, which was our March peak. And I told you we can go, 74, 75, 76, even as high as 77,000. If we look at the signals representing the trend, again, they started to turn orange right here, but turned right back. And again, we bounced off key levels of support. This line represents a short-term trend. We saw the impulse line turn back to bullish with this bar right here, and then we had that big surge. But I told you to be watching for a rally because I thought that we'd see these oscillators turn up. Again, the RSI, it got two equal peaks, but we had other things like momentum here. It got a nice looking Class A divergence, could form a triple divergence, as I've been saying. I think that is likely, and I think you're going to see this probably turn back down and complete a triple divergence, and along with my other oscillators. And that's why I told you I thought the RSI would go up and form a divergence. So we'll be watching to see if the rally fails or if it's legitimate. And again, if this rally starts filling and these divergences start completing and start producing a reversal, whether with the Fed, whether with something else, in the Middle East, whatever the case may be, there's risk of a double top pattern. Again, we're either getting a legitimate breakout or it's a fake out, one or the other. Watching this week's close, last week was not convincing with the topping tail. Will this week be convincing? We'll be watching. Did predict that we would go higher to form these divergences. That's now happened. I predicted we'd get a presidential rally or rally with the Fed or both to make this happen. But again, there could be a top forming here. These signals could be warning of a larger topping process that is under construction. So do keep that in mind. As we get the rallies, we're getting these sell signals. Rally, sell signals. And then here we have the rally. Will more sell signals begin to show up? We'll be watching. Back over here, when I called the bottom at the 52,000 area, we began to see bottoming signals here and then here with this rally, and then the impulse line and the momentum line, and we began to see things flip, and it was validated with momentum going positive. And then we saw trend signals begin to turn, and again we saw the rally, and the signals were correct. And then I told you we were going to get a sell-off here. We did. I told you we had divergences. We even had it right here with momentum. We had it on the 4-hour chart, and then we had this rally again. Warned you of these pullbacks. I warned you of the back test. And again, they've been correct. Divergence was correct to warn about a back test, but I told you we were going to likely go higher, and we did. Why? Because I thought we'd get another reference point of a divergence, and again, that was correct. Signals continue to be correct. My prediction about the higher high is correct. The question now, is it going to produce a double top? We get a legitimate breakout. We'll be watching very closely. But if we start losing 69,000, losing the breakout of the trend line, then that's going to be bearish. Dropping back below the March high, these things are going to be bearish. So we got to be able to stay above these levels. Push scenario did play out in the back test and all these other pullbacks that I've talked about. But again, I told you, go over here. We're going higher. We get a lower high below 73,700. We got a higher high, and again, after we broke out here, I predicted we'd break out. Pullback, I told you, when we started to pull back, I told you the RSI is going to form a divergence, that we'd pierce above that previous peak, and I told you I've changed my mind about that, which I did. And again, presented with evidence, a person changes their mind. Just dig your heels in. And that's what I'm saying. Again, do we have a legitimate breakout or not? But I changed my mind about that, and I predicted this rally, and I predicted that correctly, just as I predicted this rally. Rally back over here to the 68, 69,000 area. Told you we can go as high as 70, 71. Went a little bit higher, and then again, that changed my mind going higher, that I predicted this rally would happen. Now it's happened. Now we'll be watching what happens with our signals. Do they remain bullish and it's off to the races, or is it a reversal and a double top pattern? We'll be looking for clues clues as the bulls and bears fight it out for control. The bulls are winning. My signals remain bullish. Weekly signals are trying to turn back to bullish, and I'll try to touch on that in my next video. But be looking at the Sunday close for our weekly signals. Do we get another topping tail in the weekly time frame, or do we get legitimate breakout? I warned you in my last two videos that we were likely going to see a divergence develop, and I told you we might get a lower high, but my feeling we were either going to rally with the presidential election or the Fed to give a new high to form a divergence on the RSI in the daily time frame, and triple divergences on some of my other oscillators that I've been talking about. We got it. We got the rally. We're above this high now. So again, we have this divergence going on. Could form a brand new divergence right here. Point. We have a little tiny one right here with these two peaks right here. We move slightly higher. Just a little tiny divergence has given us a pullback right now. This could evolve into a bigger divergence right here if we hang around this area for a little bit and go higher, or again to the 77,000 area that I talked about. Talked about that $4,000 or $5,000 above the previous peak, which would be the March peak. You'll see it if you watch the video all the way through what I'm talking about. Told you that it could be something similar to what we had in 2021, where we went about $4,000 or $5,000. It's $4,100 to be exact. Given a ballpark, but I actually measured it, and it was $4,100. You'll see that in the video, and that could take us again, as I talked about my last update, as high as that 77,000 area. Going above the March peak at 73,700, we can go to 74, 75, 76, on up to into 77,000 if we go, about $4,000 higher. We did in 2021. A lot of similarities. There's a freak show going on between the 2021 top and what we have going on right now. A lot of similarities in the weekly time frame with the RSI, with the moving averages, with the months that we were topping in. Very similar. Video all the way through, you'll see that. But this rally that I predicted that we would get, form this divergence, talked about in my last two updates, has now happened. So again, we could reverse immediately, or we could better define this right here if we end up reversing. Now, if we don't, if we have a legitimate breakout, then it can only give us a pullback. We got to stay above 69,000. We got to stay above 73,000. The 73,757 area. The March peak. We've got to stay above these highs if we have a legitimate breakout. The RSI is forming that divergence. The MACD is going higher than the previous peak. I told you to watch for a divergence in my last update on both of them. MACD is moving higher, so we'll be watching that. Pre-parameter, I told you in the last update that, again, it could form a triple divergence in this most recent price action if we got the rally I was looking for to form on momentum and the RSI and other indicators. If we got another push higher, which again, looking for because I was looking for a Class A divergence on the RSI in the daily time frame. And pre-parameter turned up. It's forming a multiple point divergence right here. As we get potentially a 3 drives to a high, possibly in the intraday 4-hour time frame. Larger diversions with this peak over here, back over here that was made, which again, we had those divergences. We talked about them at the time on the RSI. And we start selling off and to top and start reversing with some of these divergences intraday and on the daily chart. Then we'll be watching, does a rally fail, or is it the real deal Don Steele, or a fake phony baloney plastic banana good time rock and roll fake rally? Which is it? Watch that weekly close. I'll be talking about that come Sunday or Monday when we get that weekly close in the weekly time frame. Okay, I've been predicting a rally after a successful back test. I talked about this in my last update in great length and detail, and I told you I thought we'd exceed this level and get a rally back up there, forming a double top with the previous peak. In my last two updates, again, if we get a successful back test right here, we can rally up beyond this peak right here, beyond the high over here at 73,700, and we can go to 74, 75, 76, and I told you we could even go as high as 77. We came to 76,481. Again, if we're getting a peak that is similar to the topping process in 2021, again, we went $4,000 or $5,000 above the previous peak, which again, this is 73,000 700. If we move above it by $4,000, that's 77,000. I talked about this in my last video that we could go 4 or 5,000. So that's why I said we may even go a little bit higher, up to 5,000, if we are in a topping process. But again, got the rally, big rally on a Trump victory. Again, pro-crypto policies, crypto traders celebrating that, and we get a big Bitcoin rally. We had a breakout, we had a back test, and again, we moved beyond this trend line back to this trend line right here from that 70,000 peak right there, and we hit that trend line, got back above both of them here after dipping below both of them slightly there. A possible rising wedge in play, and again, we're going to be watching how this looks in the weekly time frame by the weekly close. Again, did the bulls just give us a legitimate breakout in a new bull phase or topping process? Again, the problem with President Trump's victory, Wall Street celebrating his economic policies that, again, he won the election. The crypto community celebrating his pro-crypto policies. Problem is that we're going to have a recession. The recession indicators are flashing, and as good as President Trump's policies may be, economically, they can't stop the recession from happening. They may lessen the pain, they may shorten it, but they can't stop it. Going to inherit a recession, and we know from the uninverting of the yield curve, and we know from the SOM rule that recession is probably about 3 to 6 months away from September, when the signal was triggered. Maybe it goes 9 months, maybe it goes 3 months, but right around 6 months or so, we should be seeing signs of a recession or be in one. One is coming. I talked about the bullish scenario that Bitcoin could rally ahead of that into the first quarter if we get the recession starting in the second quarter of 2025. That's a bullish scenario. Still going to have a recession, and Bitcoin will eventually price that in. The bullish scenario is that we do it right before the recession hits. Scenario would be that we're in a topping process right here. Again, we're going to be watching the weekly charts to see if they close bullish, and if they do, then again, it can remain that way. That's going to be very bullish. Revert back to bearish, and we start crashing back down. If the rising wedge ends up playing out, then again, reversal is possible. We continue to hold above the 100 period moving. I'm a big believer in the 100 period moving average. That's this pink line right here. Again, when you're above the 100 period, again, we came up to it. We pulled back to it. I talked about this at the time. And again, I told you we were going to go higher. We did. I told you we were going to break above the trend line right here. And we did. Reevaluating the divergence, I told you we'd likely back test and go and get another push higher. Again, of the March peak. And we did. Again, we're holding above the 100 period moving average. And again, my signals have done an amazing job of calling the swing moves up with the bullish moves up. Again, these pullbacks that have taken place. And right here, this pullback, my signals did a very good job in calling that. But then again, I predicted we still move to new highs, that we'd likely get a presidential election rally or a rally with the Fed or both, a rally with both. And that's now happened. We were up 9% for the session. And again, signals continue to be correct. The question now is, did we get a legitimate breakout and back test, and we're now in a new bull phase, forming a double top, and the move is going to fail? I told you we'd likely see triple divergences on some indicators, and the RSI forming a negative divergence. That is now happening. But I told you also to be watching this upper level here. Again, I talked about the 76,000 area up in this area right here, and we did reach that upper band. It's possible that we terminate the rally here or just this area a little bit higher maybe, or at this area over here. We terminated the rally over here, we hit it, and then we went a little bit higher and terminated the rally. But it marks extremes, and it marks short-term tops and bottoms. So again, we'll be looking at this closely. But again, here you can see we broke out, we back tested, we moved back to that other trend line I showed you from the 70,000 peak over here, and then we bounced, and here we've reached this extreme now. I told you in my last couple of updates, again, I was looking for a back test and likely a rally with the presidential election and with the Fed meeting, or we can rally with the presidential election and sell off with the Fed meeting. And again, we'll be watching to see how it unfolds. But this target level I talked to you about right here has now been reached. And again, we hit that 76,000 area. Again, I talked about some of my indicators forming triple divergence. We had this divergence that gave us this back test. Told you we could form a triple divergence on some indicators, like right here. Divergence on others. If the rally ends up filling, we have a possible double top. If we get a legitimate breakout back test, we never drop down below 69,000 again. We stay above 69,000. You clear the March peak. We've had the back test. You stay above the March peak. They're at 73,700. You get this legitimate breakout. Okay? Then you've got yourself a bull market. If the weekly charts can turn bullish and remain that, somehow we manage to dodge a recession, which again is unlikely. The only thing is that you can get a bull market ahead of the recession if you get it right before it. But again, more than likely, if you get a recession, Bitcoin will begin to price in that recession. So again, if the stock market out at resistance levels that we're at directly overhead, then Bitcoin might do the same and top out with a double top. We'll be watching to see. But again, talked about a turn back up to get this RSI to form a divergence. We had a Class B divergence where you had two equal peaks over here. I thought we'd get a Class A divergence that's now formed. So again, I'll be watching to see if we turn down or if we flirt with this area a little bit more, go a little bit higher and then turn down. We still, again, might go $5,000 above this peak if we do have a double top. That's what happened back in 2021. We went about $4,000 or $5,000 above that level. Move today did come on good volume, okay? And the trick is now it's got to have staying power. You start drifting back below the March peak. You start drifting back below 69,000 in Bitcoin, and the trend line right here, the Bitcoin is in trouble. If it can stay above those levels, that is bullish. If you can remain above those levels and not drop back below them. The MACD also forming a divergence. We've turned back up. The MACD currently has a lower high, so we're going to be watching if we get a little divergence right here. But again, I told you we're likely going to see a rally with the presidential election and or the Fed, both. And again, it might be that we get the rally with the election and then the sell-off with the Fed or something like that. We'll be watching. But be watching. Does Bitcoin stay above 69,000? Does Bitcoin stay above the March peak? If you start dropping back below it, then there's risk of a double top pattern here. We also have a possible channel here rather than the peak here and taking that higher. If I just take these levels here and draw a parallel line here, and again, my trend line moved on me a little bit there. Again, you've got a parallel channel, but watch the divergence to see what happens. Got to stay above the trend line. Got to stay above 69,000. Got to stay above 73,700 if this is the real deal, Don Steele. I talked about the weekly chart at great length and detail, and I told you, again, if we break above this level, the problem is that, again, the RSI and other indicators are forming a potential divergence. If we move to new highs above the March peak, that's now happening. The RSI is not moving to a new high. We had this divergence over here, give us a 33% sell-off. We bounced off the 50-week moving average. We came back up, and we're getting a higher high. The RSI is not validating it. That's what we had over here. We had this divergence, give us this peak. We sold off 55%. So we bounced off the 50-week moving average. We went back up, and we moved just above this high. That's what we're doing right now. We moved just above this high by about $4,000 or $5,000, and I'll try to get the exact amount there for you in a minute. But we got a lower high right in here, and that was it. And we got couple topping tails, and we really couldn't confirm a breakout above this level. It ended up failing, and we ended up dropping back down. We lost 50% in less 2 months, and 52%. And then we tried to rally, and then stalled up the 50-week moving average, and then the bottom fell out of Bitcoin. And we got a 50 or a 2050 sell signal. We dropped below the 20, and we dropped below the 50 level on the RSI, and we remained there as we had this bigger drop. So now, we've come back up, bouncing off the 50. We're forming this potential divergence. Do we see something like that, or do we get a legitimate breakout? But you've got a divergence developing here. That is a problem. Now, for the week, we are up 9.61%. Again, a big rally on the presidential election. It was pro-crypto. So again, the crypto community celebrated that. Wall Street celebrated that with hopes of Trump's implementing Trump's economic policies. Now, do we get this divergence and reversal, or do we get a real breakout ushering in a bull market? Signals are now flipping back to bullish. Will they remain that way? And then again, that tells us we're either going sideways or we're going up. That's what it tells us. If we're going sideways, we're in this topping process. But right here, potential divergence on the RSI in the weekly time frame, looking very similar to the top in 2021. Again, the problem with the top in 2021 is we went up here and you couldn't clear this area and stay above it. You ended up dropping right back below it, and this happened. We were told that wouldn't happen. Could we see the same thing here? We got a topping tail last week. What does this week look like? Do we have a topping tail again before the week ends? We got a couple of them over here. So do we see something like that? Do we get back-to-back topping tails? So here's the weekly chart, and we had this breakout last week. It ended up back testing. I talked about before we had the sell-off, I said, when if we get a back test that gives us a topping tail? I told you that was very possible, and that did happen. Could we see the same thing here? Or again, do we get a strong close, but then end up maybe the following week having a reversal happen? We got a strong close over here, but we had a reversal happen. Here we got a strong close. We got a fall by a doji. A reversal happened. Do we see something like that? Or do we get a topping tail like we had over here and like we had over here? So we're going to be watching. Or do we get a legitimate breakout? Now, I told you, again, above 69,000. We've had failed attempt after failed attempt to clear it, 10 in all. And here we are with number 11. So again, you got to stay above this level. You got to stay above this peak. And if you do, then you can get a legitimate breakout. If you don't, then again, you've got the possibility of a divergence and a topping process. And when you've broken out of these levels in the past to new all-time highs, you broke and you just kept going. Here we pushed up, we pulled back, we broke above it, and we just soared. Okay? And when we cleared this level right here, we actually did the same thing. We just soared. When we cleared this level, we just soared. And again, when we came up to this peak right here, well, we came up to it and we failed. We came up to it, we tried to break above it, and we dropped 78%. So again, the breakouts have given us big moves higher. Will this breakout do that, or will it be something like what we had right here? And that's what we're watching, because the risk is that we have a larger topping process in a bear market, that rather than a breakout, it would be a fake out, that we have what's called an expanded flat. And again, this assumes that the breakout fails. If it's legitimate, then we go a lot higher. Can go to 100,000, but if it ends up failing, an expanded flat is where you come up here, you have a sell-off. We had a sell-off of 78. You come back to the peak and you move just above it, form a topping process, and then you come back down and you take out the low back over here. That's a prolonged, extended, corrective move. That's called an expanded flat. It could be that way if we have a topping process here. New bull market, you got to stay above the red line. Peak over here at 69,000. We had all those attempts to get above it. Now we're getting above it again. Number 11, will we get above it? And then you've got to be able to stay above it and stay above the peak over here. Now, look what happened. I've talked about this. Over here, we've had the peak in April in 2021. We sold off to the 50. We had the peak here in March. We sold off to the 50. Green line. We rebounded back up, came up, made a new high. The 10 got back above the 20. The red line got back above the blue. Red line got back above the blue. Okay, very similar. Okay, here we came up, we tried to get above it, and it failed. Here we came up, we tried to get above it, and we were just underneath it, and it failed. Okay, very, very similar, but again, a test of that peak, and it failed. Now then we got above it, and we couldn't confirm it. We couldn't confirm it. We got topping tails. We ended up closing back below it, and it ended up reversing. Here, again, we tried to get up, just move up to it. We came up with just in $200 under that level and reversed and back tested, and we got the topping tail. What do we look like by the end of the week? Do we get another topping tail, or do we close strong, but then next week get a candle of indecision and then fall by a reversal bar? Do we see something like that? So again, do we have a legitimate breakout, or do we have a fake out? And really, that is really Going to be determined on if we can hold above 69,000, hold above 73,700, and see the weekly charts remain bullish and hold above these levels. That would be very bullish. Dropping back below them and getting something like this, that would be extremely bearish. So again, we're going to be watching as the bulls and bears fight it out. Right now, the bulls are winning. And this weekly signals try to turn back to bullish. We'll see if it can remain that way. But again, be watching. We close by Sunday. Just bring this up close over here. You can see, again, we had the peak in early 2021. We came up here. We had the peak. We dropped and we came back up to it. And we struggled to get back above it. And then we pulled back for a week. And then 3 weeks later, after this bar, 3 weeks later, we moved to a new high. But again, failed to clear that level and got the reversal bar. And again, this is when everybody was saying we were going to be at 100,000. This was November of 2021. We're in November of 2024 right now. Everybody's saying, oh, the fourth quarter is so bullish. Really? The fourth quarter right here, we collapsed, and by the time we hit January, we were down 52%. Topped and we crashed in the fourth quarter. We're in the fourth quarter now. We're being told, oh, no. The fourth quarter is only bullish. Well, that's where you had your top in 2021. But the similarities, the peak here in April, the peak we had in March earlier this year. Now the testing of that level in November, and yet we're testing the peak right now from earlier in 2024 in November. Very similar, and again, it's kind of a freak show with what happened back over here. It's a lot of similarities. Do we have a legitimate breakout or do we have a fake out? And only time will tell. The bullish narrative is, oh, we have this cup with the handle pattern, and here we go. Okay. The other problem that is you could also have a double top with this peak over here and this peak over here in this topping process. So that's the risk. And again, how do we close? Do we get a legitimate breakout above this high? Do we hold above 69,000? These are the things that if you could do it, that's bullish. If you can't do it, that's going to be extremely bearish. Over here at the 2021 top, when we were told, oh no, here we go, never dropping below 60,000 again, and yet the opposite to what everybody thought was going to happen happened. So again, now I want to remind you again, my signals turn back to bullish when we hit the 50-week moving average here in the weekly time frame. And again, right after we hit that level, right after that, my signals turn back to bullish, and again captured most of this move. And I told you the pullbacks were, and again, when we broke out that we were going to pull back, but I told you I thought we would now go up and challenge this high and move above it, which I've talked about in my last two videos. I was looking for another divergence on the RSI, and then we'll see what happens. The RSI in the daily time frame, because now we have a divergence going on in the weekly time frame. Does that play out, or again, do we get a legitimate breakout? I told you I'd get this number for you. By the way, here again, when we peaked right here, the first peak in April of 2021 was 64,988. The second peak in November of 2021 was 68,999. That just right under 69,000. So we just round up and call it 69,000 for simplicity. The difference between them is exactly 4,100. We went up 4,000 from 64 to 68, and then we went $100 above this 898 level to 998. So 4,100 right on the nose. So if we that as a ballpark estimate, should we see the rally fail, and again, it may be a legitimate breakout, have to get the rally ahead of the recession or dodge a recession, one or the other. If Bitcoin were to go 4,100 above the March high at 73,757, our recent March peak in 2024, that would take it up to 77,857. The high that we hit on Wednesday is 76,407 so far. This would be about $1,400 higher, or about 1.75% or so, just above 1.75% above our high from Wednesday. So again, just under 2% higher. If we do something similar, going up about $4,100 like we did in 2021. No guarantee that we have a double top. If signals turn bullish and remain that way, holding above the red line again is 69,000, holding above the broken trend line, having a successful back test, and holding above 73,757. If we do that, we hold above these levels, that's bullish. Remember, we had this rally of 8%, and then the bulls freaked out because we sold off. And now the bears are freaking out because we're rallying. And we're trying to determine, do we have a legitimate breakout here, or is it a fake out? And again, Bitcoin's got to prove itself. We've made so many attempts to try to get above 69,000, and which is the peak in 2021, that have failed. Will we be able to do it here and confirm and then get the follow through? If we do, and weekly signals can remain bullish, and we don't drop back below these levels again, don't drop back below the high over here, then again, that's going to be bullish. Dollar is surging. Bitcoin is surging. One of them is wrong. They have a negative correlation. The dollar is surging, Bitcoin is surging. The Fed tomorrow, your yield is surging. Election, strong economy. No, we're going into recession. We know that. The recession indicators have flashed. So again, it's rising. The 10-year yield is rising. The dollar is rising. Bitcoin's rising. Which one is wrong? Does the 10-year and the dollar have a positive correlation? Well, short term, it does. One of them is wrong. Either Bitcoin is right or the dollar is right. We'll likely pull back, and so will Bitcoin. Eventually, I think the dollar will move higher and Bitcoin will move down if we get a double top, which I do think is a strong possibility. Nobody thinks that's possible. And again, how we close the week out. Right now, we're up 9.5% so far. We'll see how we close this week out.